Hi everyone and welcome back. We are on day 2 of our holiday series, the 12 days of comfort and color, and I'm glad you're here. Make sure that you first check through your list of cozy things. Okay, so for cozy number 1, we want a nice mug of something warm. You don't have to do it, but it just kind of aids in the idea of comfort. So I've got some tea, maybe you've got some cocoa. We've got that for our first thing. Our second thing today is going to be that we have a little candle and we light our candle. I'm telling you, there's something about, I was on a camping trip once and it was absolutely freezing, but we had a candle in our little tent and I'm telling you it helped. So candle, okay, it's for the series. And then we want to have some kind of a blanket. I've got this one. I actually made this one. Isn't that cool? It's not done yet, but we don't need to worry about that right now. Anyways, that's our list of cozy things. Let's get into our list of things that we need for watercolor painting today. It's going to be the same pretty much every day, I think, for this series, but I'm happy to go through it with you. So we've got our set of watercolor paints. We have got either a towel or a paper towel, some kind of a jar with water. For the little stuff, we have got a pencil and a kneaded eraser. I love a good kneaded eraser. I've got a size 10 round watercolor brush. This one's Winsor & Newton. I'll link it below. It's honestly a really good brush. This is my ultra fine point Sharpie, which I love to use for the ink at the end. I'm going to be working from a 6" by 9" piece of cold press watercolor paper. This one's Canson. Make sure you have your template if you're using one. It's not necessary, but it is in the free printables in the day 0 video that we used for setup. If you've got a little heat gun or a craft gun, we can use that to kind of dry in between things, and we will be using that one today. What else do I need to show you? I'll show you what we're painting today. And it's this. So today, this is the stocking we're going to do. And if you look at the template is actually a little bit shorter. So we're going to work on how to lengthen things using this. I think it's going to be lovely. So make sure your space is cozy, and let's go ahead and get started. So what we're going to need for this part is our pencil and our eraser, your paper and your template. And first we're going to start by observing. So I love this one. I honestly really love it. I'm going to point out a few things just as we observe, which I think is always a great idea before you start painting anything. The first thing is that we already pointed out it's longer than the template, so we've already know that one. And it has 2 large flowers and the start of a third. It then has leaves, which are very skinny and curvy. And then it has these small little circles, and they are of different colors, and those don't matter too much. We have up here a nice flat wash. Look how nice and even that is. It has barely any markings, maybe a little bit right here. So that's a nice place to practice a flat wash. And we have a darker background than the rest of it. So whenever we're doing something like this, you can skip the background and make it easier for yourself. The background can be white. You can actually paint around it if you choose to. But we will be doing that, so we'll be doing that part last. And as we notice things like this, they're basically circular for these flowers. The petals are all of similar shape, but they're not perfect, and that's okay. I still really like it when I look at it. And the stocking is facing towards the right and has these skinny little strings, I guess, on top. That's probably enough of our observing for today. We can go ahead and get into it with our template. So what I want to do for the template is just pull it down. Notice it is a bit on a little bit of an angle to the right, which leaves more space up here for the strings. So I want to do that, and you can honestly just look at this one with me if you've got the same size paper, and we'll just kind of try to set it on there so that it fits into that same space. But we're keeping it down low, which means we'll be able to add some height to it in a moment. So for now, let's actually just kind of start right here. And we're going to always press really lightly with our pencil, which means that we can erase easily, which means that we can sketch freely. So I'm just doing this nice little outline. Try to really make sure that your line is as fluid as possible. It just helps, especially if you're going to cut these out later. But honestly, we just want a nice little straight line. Now I'm going to stop. So I have traced it to here. Okay, I want to take this. I'm going to try to match it up here and pull it up towards the top all the way. So I've got maybe like a pencil width above it. I do want to make sure I'm kind of staying in the same direction. And when I get it here, see, I can see my pencil lines on either side just a little bit. Now I'm just going to continue tracing the whole thing. Remember, we're pressing lightly. I'll repeat that so many times during our time together, but I think it's helpful. And then in a moment, if this is weird, we'll fix it. Okay, so I've got my template. I've got my outline here. I actually don't really think it's weird, but if your pencil got any like darker here, or your lines got messed up, just grab your little kneaded eraser. I'll make sure one of the kneaded erasers is linked below also. They usually are. They're like $3. They're great. Okay, the next thing I want to get is this, because that will give us the rest of like the basic shape. So let me try to get in a little closer for you guys. Here we go. And we're just going to go ahead and look at this one. And when we're doing things like that, we just look, where does it start? Where does it stop? So we'll do this one on top first. Notice it overlaps this one. And I'm going to put a little, I'm going to come in maybe like a pencil and a half width. I can hear my cat playing on my Christmas tree right now. I'm trying to ignore that. Okay, and then I see that it's going to overlap right here. So I'm still in the cuff, and I'm maybe a pencil and a half again before I see where it's going to cross. So that's a beginning. And we can even start just gently taking this up to here, matching it on this side. Keep this one skinny. In fact, it's already too thick. I'm going to make it a little bit skinnier and erase part of that, because I know what's coming next. And some of them will be a little wider, but something about this is that it's nice and skinny. Okay, let's look at, where does it end? If I were to divide this bottom part in half, it's somewhere near the half, maybe even a little lower than half, like when I come down. So I can put a little mark where I think I want it to go, maybe all the way down here. And while I'm here, I can kind of put a mark where I think the next one is going to end as well. But let's start with just this first one. Notice it crosses and comes over here. Ooh, I want to yell at my cat right now. Well, I don't want to yell at her. I just want to scare her away from it. Okay, it's going to come up, cross over diagonally, and then kind of up. So I might change this in a minute. I never really worry about it being perfect the first time. And that's why I keep talking about pressing lightly on your pencil. Something like this is great. I know I have 2 spots that I'm going to need to erase, but we can do that in a minute. Now let's look at where the other one overlaps. So we're looking, where does it start? Here and here, putting little marks where I see right here and right here. Okay, I do want to keep it skinny, so I'll watch for that. And where does it overlap? Right here. It's kind of right below the cuff. So that's how I'll know. I'll look for the cuff here, and I'll know they're going to overlap about here. Something like that. And look, it creates this shape right here that's like a really squished eyeball. No, that's going to be weird, and your brain's going to kind of tell you, no, it's not that. It's maybe this instead, you know? So whatever shape you see right here. Then we're going to take this and use our little marks that we already created and connect everything together, pressing lightly. And we want equal distance between these 2 lines kind of everywhere we go. Just because if these are ribbons or strings, they're probably the same, you know, thickness all the way around. I got some real funky spots. I'm going to get out my eraser. I don't want to see the line of the edge of the stocking, because this ribbon or string will be in front of it. And if it's in front of it, we wouldn't see any of the stocking lines going through. So now I'm just kind of cleaning it all up, making sure, like, if this one is in front, there shouldn't be any lines going through it at all. Oh, I almost missed this one right here where the line of the stocking goes through that. I still don't like to use the back of my pencil. I'm telling you, I don't trust it. I think it might get just like a big gray blob on my paper, and then I get irritated, and I don't like it. So I try to help you not be irritated. Okay, because we're friends. Okay, we got the whole outline done, and I love this one. So from here, let's see if I can figure out a good way to... I think that might be good for now, where we can just see the whole thing. And let's go ahead and cross this line because we are using the cuff on this one. So we're going to just gently, you can even pull it in from both sides like this. It's like you're pulling the end closer to the other end, you know, so that we have a spot for the cuff. We know that's going to be a separate color and a separate area. And then we're always going to start with like our largest shapes or our biggest items. In this case, it is these two flowers, and I want to start with the center. So we're going to start with this little bit. Let me stick my pencil on there. See, it's just a little bit bigger than my eraser. Okay, so you can use that as a guide if you'd like to. And I'll put that where I'm going to guess, okay, because this doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm going to come down this much. I am looking, I want my whole flower plus some blue space up top, so I don't want to get too high. And I'm going to put a little circle right here, pressing lightly. And I want to actually complete this flower first, then we can see how big it is, and we'll use that, and we'll get into the next one. Something I like to do, I'm going to zoom in for you on this one, is when I'm doing a flower like this, I like to divide up the petals to make sure they'll be somewhat even. So watch this. We're going to do a line through it this way. Then I want to just take, like, this is the top now and that's the bottom, okay? I want to make this be in 3 sections. So if I took a diagonal line this way and a diagonal line this way, I would have them pretty much good to go. So watch. This is the math part. Okay, cool, right? So if you do that, and just pause it if you need to or whatever, you're going to have a really nice space to put your petals within. Now you can use this line or use it as a guide. It doesn't matter, okay? Like, see, I can veer in, and I'm going to come up, dip down and up and down. So I might end it like erasing some of those, but that's fine. I'm going to do it here too. I'm going to come down, dip, and come out. So it's up the hill, down the hill, up the hill, and back down. And I know that's like, might sound silly. Up the hill, down the hill, up the hill, and back down. But those things help us. They just do. Our brain's like, I know what that means. I got that. So here we go. And then I'll erase whatever lines I don't need, which is why I will continue to tell you to press lightly on your pencil. I'm just erasing any spots that overlapped. Even if I erase what I actually want to stay, I'll just quickly fill that back in. I can't be worrying about only getting teeny tiny spaces with my eraser. Okay, I'm going to show it to you. It's imperfect. We don't care. And then we're going to get into this one, which you notice, if this is kind of right where the dip is on the stocking, it's basically there, maybe a little bit lower. Oh my gosh, you guys. My cat, I feel like it's going to be on like Elf, where like he jumps on the tree to put the star up and then the whole tree falls. That's going to be Pickles in a minute here. Okay, got this little circle here. We are matching this size to this size. Okay, so we want it to be basically the same. And then let's do our trick again. You don't have to start this on any particular way. But once you get a top and a bottom, you might want to turn it. Zoom in for you. And from there, we'll go ahead and divide it. And I can tell this is not exact. That's fine. And I think the shorter you keep those lines, the more likely you can just use them. But look, mine's a little smaller. I'll bring it out just because I'm telling you to. But once again, even if I'm telling you to do something, you always can do anything you want when you're painting or sketching. The artwork is yours, and your eye is the one that decides if it looks good. So if you see this and you're like, ooh, hate that kind of flower, then you do a different kind of flower today. And that's going to be the same for colors and for scale and everything. There is a good lesson in the 30 days of watercolor tips and tricks about making changes, and that might be a fun one for you to consider during this series. I'll try to link it, but it's just like let's say you kind of like this, but you know, it gives you ideas for how to change it. You get the picture. Okay, so from here, we're going to go to the next biggest things. And from far away, you probably can't maybe even see this dark line because you can see the green leaves so much better. But if you look up close, we do have a stem first. The stem won't be painted with watercolor paints. It'll just come in with ink at the end. But that makes this shape kind of bigger than you maybe thought, you know? And so we're going to go ahead and start with that stem, and it starts right here at the corner. So I know that's where it will begin. And I want that leaf to come between these and end about here. Maybe the leaf itself will start here. So this curvy stem just needs to come about this far. I'm going to come to the left a little bit, down to the right. From here, this nice little swoopy skinny leaf. Okay, and just look at the shape and copy it or make your own shape. I've got one leaf higher on the left and then filling this space on the right. I want it to end about here. Okay, so that's where I'm going to put that dot. It'll start all the way up here. So now a nice skinny curvy leaf. It doesn't really matter what shape you do, but if you don't like it, change it now. That's why we do it with pencil before we get in with our paints. I just hope some of you can hear pickles so that you can, I don't know, relate with me. Okay, our next stem is here. It starts just below the flower, and the leaf itself comes all the way down here, but the stem comes this far. So we're going to mark it all. We'll put a dot here where it's going to start. I see down here, somewhere around here, it's going to start the leaf. And then around here, and I want to come up a little bit so I have space for this leaf to be below it. I'll put a dot here. As I look at this curve, it kind of comes out and to the right and down. So swoops out and to the right and down. Okay, and then I will put this guy in here. And we've got two more. Let's put a dot where it's going to go. It's kind of splitting this space. We got a lot of blue on either side. And then a little one up here, and notice there's space for the blue on either side of it as well. I don't want it to touch anything. Okay, so I'm not going to get it all the way over to this one. We're doing good. Look at us. Those are the two long ones, and everything else is just a leaf peeking in. So I'm going to put this where we can see it. And I'm trying to decide what I'm going to do with the cat, but there's no door down here. So I don't want to trap her somewhere, but okay. This one here, we're going to, so I'm looking, where do they start? Where do they end? So we're all just kind of practicing that skill right now. Oh, you know what? We didn't put our beginning of this last flower. So before we get into that corner, let's do it. You're going to have to make it up for a minute. Okay. You know, what's funny though, is you always could take an extra piece of paper and literally draw the whole thing. Oh wait, it wouldn't be on this. It'd be on this. And then you'd have to press lightly. So like, I don't know if you want to do that or not, but you can always try to make sense of the full shape whenever that's helpful. For now though, I'm just making sense of it like this. The circle would be about here. And that's all I really need to know to make sure that this would kind of go towards it. This won't have to make sense. I don't think there's going to be a quiz. All right. I like it. Okay. We got a couple more leaves to do now. So now that we have our space filled out, this is a big leaf. I can come all the way to here and notice it doesn't start at one point. It's got two. So it'll go like this, kind of curve down in there. I want it to point a little bit more. Okay, let's get all of our leaves. I almost got into the circles. Okay, couple more, and I am looking for where they start and where they end. So don't forget, I like to call it like the dot method. And since I didn't have art in high school and I've learned a lot of this myself, the dot method could be a thing, or I could have made it up. I do not know. Have you heard of the dot method before? You guys tell me. Notice what I'm doing. I'm making the circles match basically the same size as the centers of the flowers, and now I'm going to pop them in. You can look where I did them, or you can do it your own way. I wouldn't add a bunch of extra. You can if you want, but anything you complicate the sketch on more when you're prepping for watercolor painting, just realize that means you have to get into tighter spaces or you have to do more work, you know. I'll just go this way this time. One up here. I'll still do that little half guy. Oh my goodness, I hope you love this as much as I do. Okay, this is your sketch. So pencil down, eraser up, and we'll look at it for a minute and just, is there anything you want to change? Did anything get weird? Are your leaves shaped weird? Are your dots really dark? Like, notice my dot is darker than my actual line, and I don't want that. We are going to like cover all this with paint and even do ink. So this isn't one where your lines matter too much. But you are going to want to be able to see this pencil when you paint over it with blue first. So that's tricky, right? Because we're gonna paint this whole thing with the blue paint and then later have to try to see our pencil line to put the ink over top. So just kind of take note of that. You don't want this to be like barely there because there's just no point. You're just going to make things harder for yourself. I got a little mark up here. Okay. Good. All right, you might need a stretch. I don't know. And we're going to start by mixing up our paints now. Let's see. This can get out of the way. I'll bring my paint set over. And if you've got your spray bottle, we can go ahead and spray this side. Now, this is from the day one painting, actually. And I left it there because I thought, you know what's kind of nice is, let's say you wanted to display these together or something, or you're working on things you'd like to display together. This makes my color consistent between the two. So if I use this dark one for the dark spot, or if I add some water to it and lighten it up, I know that this color will likely match yesterday's artwork as well. So if that matters to you, you can do that. Otherwise, you can make a new pile. Look at this. Hold on. Okay, I just sprayed and the spray got into this. Look at how cool that is. I love it. Okay, that's us being mindful about like the pretty things. Okay, we're gonna get into our mixing of our colors. So we're gonna make puddles on the left. These are paints on the right. We're gonna take our brush, get it full of water. Did I spray these already? Yeah, I did. Okay. And we're going to mix up the colors that we want to see on our painting today. I say we could start with this lovely light green color. For me, I used the 4th green up from the bottom right. If you don't have this set though, maybe a green that has a little bit of blue in it. I'll put it here, and right away, it's pretty good the way it is. Actually, I was going to add water immediately, and you can do that. We want it to be a puddle. Okay, so if it doesn't seem like a puddle and you can't take your brush and move it around, you need to add some water to it, even if that means you then need to add more paint to get it to be the color that you want it to be. I'll do a little bit more because I want my puddle a little bit bigger. So I'm adding both paint and water, and I came back, this will be a puddle. I like the color, so I'm good. I'm going to clean out my brush. I am going to take one of these, and I added just a brush full of water. Notice I'm mixing the whole thing in. And now I got to decide, is this going to be my lighter color or my darker color? And I say light. So I'm going to add water to it. I could even clean the pigment out of my brush into my jar and now come back again. And it'll be a little bit lighter. So I really like this color. I think we had started from either the 2nd or the 3rd red yesterday. So, you know, that's what we're starting with on these kind of dried up puddles. But if you like a red that has a little more orange in it or something, experiment. And you can always mix colors on your palette. But when we're working on something like this where we want a lot of the same color, it is easier if you use one color that's a pre-made color, because let's say you run out and you need to kind of quickly make up more, right? It's easier to do so from one puddle than mixing it to match perfectly to what you've already done. Okay. Watch this. I'm going to clean up my puddle. You know how I say in like lifting, you can clean up, you can lift and clean up what you've done. I just did it on my palette too. So we have got the lighter color, which means this needs to be the darker. So now I'm not going to have quite as much water on my brush. I'm even mixing these two colors. I don't care. And I want this darker color. I want you to look at this and decide, do you want that cuff to be the light color or the darker of like the reddish? It doesn't matter. I think it's lovely both ways. I think I'll probably keep the light, but initially I had planned it with that darker color. This doesn't need to be that big of a puddle, but whatever. 1, 2, 3, and then we just need the blue. It's a nice simple color palette, really. Okay, this blue I think is a combo of like this navy blue, which is actually called Payne's Gray. And I think, so maybe this one plus this one. Okay, so here I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5th one down. So I'm going to grab the 5th one down and I'm going to test myself and see if I'm right. This one, but notice it's a little bit brighter. I'm going to zoom in and see if you can tell any better or not. But then I'm going to tone it down a bit by adding that navy color, which leans more towards neutral because it has black in it. And I'm going to mix them together until I like it. So I like this because of the dark background, but if you don't care, I mean, 1, you don't have to paint the background, or 2, you can do a very, very light blue would be lovely as well. I do want to make sure I've got a good amount of this mixed up. So remember, it's easier if you don't mix, but I am mixing. So I'm going to make sure I've got a decent sized puddle to start, and I remember where these are coming from, and so that when I need to make more, if I need to make more, I know where it's at. Okay, you may need to change the your water. Mine's like quite dark now, but I actually just have another one here. See, nice clean water. So I'm just going to use that one now, and I'll move my paints out of the way. So, all right, maybe take a sip of your hot cocoa. Maybe stretch. We will be back and forth a little bit to the heat gun today. My paper is kind of curled up. Notice I'm just bending it gently this way to flatten my paper. We'll be back and forth to the heat gun because we have all these different colors, and if we were to paint them next to each other, they would all bleed, and we don't want that. So we're going to start with, let's start with the pink, this light pink color. And so how we're going to do it is we're going to make sure your brush is like clean and dry. And when I say dry, I'm just wiping it twice on my towel. That's it. Then I'm going to get my brush, maybe half of my brush, into this light pink color. I'm going to turn my paper to make this the easiest I can for myself. Remember, the tip of your brush runs along the edge, and I'm also leaning into the belly of my brush, which is the big part here. Okay, in order to fill this in quite efficiently, I do not want to be working small and tiny and slow, because what will happen if I do so is that it'll be drying while I work. I'm going to give you the watercolor rule right now, which is that the more water, the less control, and the less water, the more control. I was just thinking, oh, I should have done this on the first day because I really like this one. I hope I didn't lose you yesterday. Oh, I love this. So I'm looking for nice consistent color all the way throughout. I am avoiding these strings because I don't want them to be this color. And when I get done with this, I'm going to look and see if there's any puddling and pooling. If so, I'll clean my brush, dry my brush on my towel, and I will take my brush and just gently touch where I want to lift up any excess paint or water, and I'll do it quickly and be done. If you touch it all over, it's going to show later and look messy. Okay, so I just did it like that, and I'm leaving it. This part should feel kind of like moving a puddle around your paper, so if it's drying while you work, you need to lean towards just a little bit more water. From here, I want to do my pink flowers, and just watch this. We can do the whole thing. We don't need to avoid that circle. We're going to work right on top of it with a darker color. Okay, so I'm using the tip of my brush on these edges, and I'm treating this as one large shape. Same thing again when you get here, and if I'm too fast right now, just pause me. But as I get here, I'm going to do the exact same thing again. I'm going to touch my brush to my towel and lift up any spot where there's any excess paint or water. Okay, then I'm going to move on to my next flower. Getting back into that same color again. And I'm going to do this one, covering that center. Notice I'm leaning into the belly of my brush. I'm using the tip on the edges, but I'm not like totally perfect on those edges. I just we'll be able to clean it up with that ink pen at the end. So I would say don't be worrying too much about perfect like space. I got, you know, we can handle it. From here, I'll touch my brush to my towel and lift up any excess paint or water again. And then we have that little tip. So just need a little bit of pink for this. So when you have small spaces, you want to limit your water. Ugh, that's just cute, isn't it? Same thing, touch your brush to your towel, lift up any excess. We are going to go to the dryers to dry this, but if we need to, but it's nice. You don't want big puddles and pools before you go to the dryer or the heat gun, because it'll just kind of blow them around and it might blow water onto your paper. You want to kind of get as much control as you can here. And then from here, let's get our green. I actually want to get, but we're only going to do it here and where it's not touching something wet. I'm just trying to avoid getting to the dryers just yet, but like mine is dry here, I think. So another thing you can always do is try to stay like a millimeter away from your wet paint. But I will tell you, you can like attempt that and fail at it so many times. And I'm like, oh, I'll just get really close to it and not touch it. And that way it doesn't have to be dry first. And then I'll just touch it. So just be careful with that. We are just filling in all of these little leaves. So light on the tip of your brush. We do not need as much water as we needed for these bigger spaces. Okay, so if you feel like it's out of control, you probably have a little bit more paint on your brush than you need. A little bit more water, you know. And I'm only doing the ones that aren't touching something wet. I think it's so fun to establish a new routine now and again. Sometimes it's a painting challenge or a drawing challenge, or sometimes it's just trying to, I don't know, have a new habit, or sometimes it's even just watching a TV show with someone or by yourself, but it's the same thing every day or every night for a while. I tend to love those little rhythms. Okay, if this is feeling out of control right now, you have too much water. All right, so just limit that if so. What I have done is I filled in all the leaves on the stocking base. I still need to do the string up here, but when I did it the first time, it was a little bit wet still, and I don't want any of that color bleed. So I'm gonna take this and give it all, actually, wait a minute. Let's get the dots first too. I got ahead of myself. Let's get these little circles. So I would say about half of them will be this light pink. And notice how I'm doing circles is I'm kind of just moving my brush around in a little circle. Okay, then I want that red for the next. So once again, it's a tiny space. So really control how much water you have. If it's out of control, you can clean your brush and dry your brush. And then only dip the tip of your brush into your red puddle. If it's just immediately dry while you're painting, you need to air on just a little bit more water. Watercolor is called watercolor. And if you don't have enough water, it's going to look more like kind of like acrylic painting, but because it's transparent, it'll actually look messier than that. And that I think can be really frustrating, so I'm trying to help you. Ooh, it's getting cute, bringing in some contrast here, some darker color. So I'm finishing up these last two of the red circles, and then I'm going to stop and dry the whole thing. We got pretty far before we had to dry it, so I don't think we'll be back and forth too many times. Let's go ahead and grab that green while you still got it. If it ran out, just mix some more and try to match it to what you've got here. And we're going to fill in these little strings. I made my stockings for my family. And we actually did it while my dad was in the hospital with cancer, and he has since passed away. And so the stockings are like really meaningful to us. Well, to me, probably to me, you know, I don't know if my kids care or not, but they hear the story every year for sure.
And I have, like, I made them, like I did them, I don't remember if I think we hand sewed some and we machine stitched some, but they have these little tags on them that says whose is whose, because they're all very similar and they're not attached. And every year I'm like, whose stocking is this? And no one knows. So I need to actually put some of these on with the name or initial. Finally, maybe this is the year. While we are here, we can get into our red. And while we're doing that, just think with your red, the tip of your brush in your water, and just tip of your brush into your paint or whatever, so that you have this really little amount to work with so that you can maintain control. You don't want to have a big blob of water or paint on this one. And I've got this. Let's make sure I get my full circle in there. If by chance your extra one, you could see part of the center, you'd want to do that now too. And actually, because those are in the centers of the circle, we're protected. We have this dry paint. So we can actually go in and start with our blue. What I want to tell you real quick is that this is a lovely stocking already. If this is too long and you're tired, you can outline it and be done. You could also paint around it instead of in it, and it will be simpler because we are about to go in and paint around everything in here, and it is kind of like tedious. It also can be kind of zen and relaxing. So decide what space that you are in currently, and if you want to go ahead and do the background, we want it to look kind of like a flat wash. Notice that when we look at it, we don't see too many markings. We've got a little bit of like blooming or cauliflowering here, but not too much. We want it to feel like we're moving a little puddle kind of around the paper and down to the bottom. We need enough water to keep it wet, and that's how it won't have a whole bunch of lines everywhere, but also we want to keep our water in control so it's not overlapping what we've already done. So that means you've got this little battle. I'm going to clean out my brush, wipe it on my towel, and put the first third of my brush into this puddle. Okay, you've got this little battle of, do I have enough or too much water or not enough water? Okay, I'm going to start up here. I'm going to end up going top to bottom. Remember, just the first like third of my brush is in that puddle. If you find right off the bat you have too much paint on your brush, touch your brush to your towel and it will kind of immediately take some of the paint off. If you don't have enough, then add just a little bit of paint to your brush. I accidentally went over that little circle a little bit already, which is going to bother me. But now I got to choose. Do I keep going so that this doesn't dry, or do I try to deal with that? So for now, I'm just going to keep going. And I may be able to kind of grab it a little bit after. Now you're going to have a lot of little teeny spaces to get into here. Okay, so when we're going in tight spaces, you want to be light on the tip of your brush. And you might want to hold your brush more vertical. So if you're looking at your brush and it's kind of tipped on like a diagonal or a 45-degree angle, you may want to like tip it up so it's more vertical. Really light on the tip of your brush is how you're going to keep all these details without going over. Now, if you're just like, let's say you've already started and you're accidentally going over your shapes, your leaves and your circles, maybe just try to keep a little bit of white space between this background and your design. I think that will be less frustrating to see some white space than it will be to see wet paint continually going over your design. Okay. So if you feel out of control right now, you have too much water. And if it's drying while you work, it's going to look messy. Okay, so add just a little bit more water. Now this is what we say is like whack-a-mole. Because you've got all these little ends that are drying. And like we keep saying, if they dry, they are going to leave. There's a man who would come to a lot of my watercolor classes, and he was lovely, and he would say, it leaves a witness. It leaves a witness. It shows what happened. And we don't want it to do that, so we want to have just enough wet paint to keep it moving. If you are finding you are like uncomfortable right now, just relax. You got this. And I like to remind you, like, this is a piece of paper. You are watching a virtual tutorial that you can watch again. So hopefully that takes a little bit of pressure off of what you're doing in the moment, because you can do it again. In the beginning of my painting, that was really helpful to me. It just made it easier. Like, okay, it's not life or death here. And I can paint, and I love to paint, so I can paint as much as I want and pick a favorite. And I know that's been helpful for some of you as well. Now I got to kind of quickly decide, ooh, I got all these ends drying. I think this is stressful, and I think that means I kind of put a little bit too much pressure on myself here to have it like be perfect. So try to relax on that. Cannot believe we're already into December. I feel like it was summer a minute ago. So if you haven't noticed yet, the stems on the leaves, we're just going right over those. Since they're not going to have any watercolor paint, we don't want to avoid them because that would leave white space there. And since the ink we're going to use is darker than what we're doing, it'll just go right on the top. So all right, so you just keep it moving, looking for your ends that are drying. I hope you maybe have like some music on or something. Ugh, I almost covered that one. And when I teach in person, I have to have music on. Just sets a vibe, you know? I have a lesson on flat wash in the 30-day series. And in it, I show you one of the things when I first started painting, what I did for a flat wash that made me really frustrated before I understood kind of what needed to happen in a flat wash. So I think that's interesting. If you've wanted to check that out, I'll link it. I just want to keep sending people back to that series because it is lessons on all the components of watercolor. So though we're painting together now and you're learning some things, that's like the, I don't know, in my little encyclopedia of it. Is that how you'd say it? Still considering writing a book on it. I think it might be really fun. All right, if you have lines that show it drying, so what? Remember, light on the tip of that brush. And notice when I go over a spot, I actually just take my finger and I try to move it. Oh, I'm not even on camera, guys. I was in the zone. Makes me wonder how long I was not on camera. I love this one. So we're kind of getting to where we're going to be wrapping up this background. I am going to guess I'm probably a little bit ahead of you on that part. So you just pause it and just get through the background painting. When you get through with it, we'll make sure that everything's really nice and dry. Just same thing as yesterday where we want to be able to do that ink on top. And we do not want our ink to end up looking fuzzy. Okay, make sure you're refreshing your paint all along the way on this. I'm dipping into that puddle a lot of times. One thing I noticed when I first started to record myself painting, it's kind of a cool thing to do because you can observe yourself. I had no idea how many times my brush was going over to the towel or the paints or the water. But man, like on a time lapse, my hand was over to the side like constantly the whole video. Makes you realize how much you should be either getting paint or water or whatever. Okay. Almost there. Really light on the tip of your brush in these tight spaces. And then I am going to give mine a good dry. Okay, I dried mine, and I will try to actually be on camera working now. I'm getting out my ultra fine point Sharpie, and I'm going to kind of move my paints like out of my way, so I have lots of space to turn my paper and everything as needed. And I'm just going to begin. I want to go over my pencil lines because otherwise we'll see them, and just turn your paper as needed. And we're just hanging out today. I'm second guessing myself a little bit because these are long, and I've heard the idea of don't do too long of free tutorials on YouTube because there's other artists who are, you know, have like paid materials and courses that are long, and you don't really want to kind of, I don't know, provide free things when, I don't even know how to say that. But this is 12 days. We're going to do what we do. And, okay, when we get to this part, the leaves, do that stem first. That's what I recommend. Get that stem in there and then do the leaves off of it. All I'm saying is I don't want to step on anyone's toes. I want to be careful about that. So I'm not, I think that this part can go kind of quickly. I mean, you know, you'll do it in whatever time feels good to you. But what's cool is the whole thing's already here. It's done. We are just taking an outline, and this part is always kind of like fun to me because you've got everything you need. I think it can be a little bit stressful because it's permanent, but just try to make sure you're staying on those lines. Don't get ahead of yourself too much. And when you need to lift up your pen, just kind of carefully lift, and you should maintain that nice kind of clean line. All right. When you get into these bigger flowers, you can give them some lines from the center if you'd like to. So I'll show you that in 1 second here. I'm not being like overly precious about matching up what I did. Okay, lines out from the center. Just a little line. I think Kelly says like press and lift or something. My friend Kelly, who teaches Minutes of Zen, if you are looking for more artwork to do, that's Zen Tingle. And I did a line on either side of each of them as well. Just kind of fun. You can do it any way you want, though. Notice on my reference, I didn't do quite as many lines, so see what your style is. We'll get this one in. I like it because it really does clean up what you've done. But, you know, you also could leave it without any ink as well. It's always a choice. If you don't like the look of ink, never do it. I used to always do it, and my husband was like, no, I like it without. And it would be hard for me not to do it. I know that's the same for some of you. It's like, no, I have to do the ink. I can't stop myself. And I get it. All right, I'm kind of popping through here quickly. If you would like to share your artwork on my Facebook page, Audrey Schatz Art, I would love to see your artwork there. It's fun for you to all kind of look at what each other did. And this was day 2. I'm almost there. Once I get to this point and I've got the whole thing outlined, I want to do the same thing again with my little signature. I'm going to add it right here on this flat part. And you are all finished. And remember, if you're doing art, you're an artist. I can't wait to see your work. And we'll see you tomorrow for day 3.